Thus I have heard, at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain, with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, "How should a son of the lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom?" Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words: "Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, and compositional factors in consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomenon. There is no quality of sight, and so on, until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on, up to no old age and death, and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the bodhisattva mahasattva noble Avalokiteshvara that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
We will be engaging in receiving the teachings of the Dharma with the appropriate motivations.
엔선에 다 덤비게 친이 체색이 내데 가래 아니 친이데 가르치데 제거니 선에 좋아지 땅
So then, where you are receiving these teachings, and for what purpose you are receiving these teachings of the Dhamma.
대니를 미생에 좀 거지 맞아 간가 차지요 거지 엔선에 뒤진하게 덤버 투병 보이니 생아 덤버 투병 벌어서 나리 남아지면 나지 생아라 아니 가서게 다 투지에서 그러다 변호도 저거이다.
So we will be visualizing that being yourself in the presence of the Buddha Shakyamuni, along with all those root and lineage gurus of the Lam Rim.
저기 대전에나 선유사님 말이가 저 시사 로그로 와서 이게 전바치 레그로 레가 다가라게 나 대이체 되니다 와서는 와서 경로 주셔야이나 문에 전에도 쉬우지 또 전부 잡으러.
So it's very, once receiving of the teachings will become a very productive prior to once coming here to receiving the teachings, that you have a sudden motivations, that you have set your motivations to receive this teachings of Dharma. Just you should be delighted yourself, but just before one day of receiving these teachings, that tomorrow will be the Sunday, I will be receiving the teachings, and I have a purpose of receiving the teachings. You should always have the purpose of receiving the teachings. So we will meditate for 3 to 4 minutes. So with these motivations, we are receiving the teachings of Lam Rim Chenmo. That's all. So then, as usual, so we will be, reflecting on the major outlines of the Lam Rim Chenmo. Such as the greatness of the authors given in order to show that the teaching has immaculate source, which will then be followed by the second outlines of the greatness of the Dharma given to increase one's faith in the instructions. Then the right way to teach and listen to the Dharma with true greatness. So reflecting upon the greatness of the teachings of the Dharma, the teachings actually, the source of the teaching actually comes from the Buddha, and it transmitted to his disciples all the way to one's own root gurus, unbroken. So the fourth will be the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught the actual instructions. So this will then be followed by the relying upon the teachers. Whenever we studies or contemplate on the Dharma, it is important to rely upon a teacher. So then the actual teaching will be begin. Having relied upon the teacher, how can we really, make the teachings, the Dharma teachings that you have received, practical?
주변 중요다 도모연 나제를 마냥선ense 주변 된다 도모연 나제를 마냥선ense 주변 챔비언 나제를 마냥선ense 다티노 동보데서 다니바 주변 된다 도모연 나제를 마냥선ense 제레 주변 중에서 주변 된게 삼바장 대제비치 델로로바도바세와 타바다 대제비 나제랑 제템 델라포바지 다 동보라니 타방원소하다 대제비 타우스 다 가서 대제비 타우스에 데려 다 대제비 터들라니 동해다 견주 대비관에 삼바지 아니 된대야나 준용관에 삼바니 전에 동해 된바다 견주 대비관에 삼바니 동바 나다 동바들은 아니 도대 코이 님이 삼바다 견주 코이 조린 삼바스 안티노 가서 견주 코이 조린 삼바스 될데레스.
So we were under the chapter of the origin of sufferings and reflecting on the process of cyclic existence in some terms of origin, its origin.
당가족이 내가 텔레그래다 내가 최제거 먹으세요 내가 저러 단 잠빌이 내 당선에 맞아 뭐치지 이제 된 셰바보 세대 캐질네 아니 지대 셰바보 캐만행이 되게 간이 용어잖아 다 레게 되고는 용어를 세대 내가 될 토고라 당가서.
So all the practice of the Dharma and the teachings will be derived from this reflection on the origin of sufferings. So so long as we do not accept a creator, the mighty one who creates everything that coming into beings, and our understanding of whether it is virtues or non-virtues, whether it is happiness or sufferings, are really coming about because of the origin of sufferings.
아주 강가기 팀모드 주케 내는 만에는 동해세대 면대와 지송로.
So whether one accepts Dharma or whether one accepts the religion or not, but what is common to us is we do not accept suffering. We do not desire suffering.
하나 동해 면대에도 수소와레세디 다 건축이 소와레세나레 이제 대시법 소와레세나레 다 마속이 레게 소와레세 되니 내가 지로.
So then, since we do not desire for sufferings, we do not long to, have sufferings, then why the sufferings coming into being? Who really creates the sufferings? Is there anyone who really creates the sufferings, or the creator who creates the sufferings?
당 마속이 남비 내가 시우디 긴주코 인존에 삼바세디 동해 강가데 긴주된베 소바레 시기 내단테 히고라.
So then when it comes to the Buddhism, all the sufferings are coming into being because of the origin of sufferings. The origin of the suffering is the root cause of all the sufferings.
긴주된베 간데 소바레 계셔 시우디 아니 뉴모이 소바레 시디 시어로.
So then, how this origin of sufferings really giving rise to sufferings? And then the origin of suffering here refers to the delusions or the mental afflictions.
뉴모게 레사 레제네 아니 다 진치에서로 제와다 쳐와다 바도스 비기 거래전에 될 코아스라고.
It is due to the mental afflictions we accumulate karma, engage in negative deeds, which then enables us to accumulate negative karma. This then gives rise to unending cycle of life and death within the cyclic existence.
대체 당가 좀 내가 각하도 내가 세는 가서 사지를 각하도 키우다서는 나봐 가서 제시된 연사자치 세대 같은 레벨이다.
So we are under the chapter of how we to take rebirth. How you then take rebirth. Take rebirth.
대체로 당가 저기 변화로와 지단은 가서기 추켈님 랭에 저기 세고로 켈년에서 처음에도 가서기 풍부될 지단이나 가성엘로나 이게 네 자동 자동도 된지 자니 노로라 롱세 동다 된지 자니도와 대 창소 실로는 로인이 집이 다니자고도 치와서 되로 고치 쪽으로 가서 가르치는 저거를 대파도 가르쳐 대거서 계시시고로 그러와 송지 저동 실로가 되어서 자 용다 된지 자니 될 처지 저동도 쳐도 디년도는 셔봐 동다 된지 자니 쳐도로 다대 창소 지도 대대는 대순부 주보대기 실로도 집이 다니제
So so here now, how we take rebirth. So in order to understand how we take rebirth, then how we actually die, the individuals. After dying, then you can take a rebirth, right? So here, when it coming to the process of dying, according to the Dharma, we have 72,000 channels, which pervades our entire physical aggregates. And each channels associate with the wind or the energy, which is also known as kyabjigilung, which means the pervasive wind, or the life-supporting winds. It's also known as life-supporting winds. And when all of this are dissolved and gathered at the heart, and then when all these winds then leave this body of the individual, is said to be the person is no longer alive.
변은 나중에 실로를 힌두지 강도디 힌두 코로기 종화 라바 로 조히 라바데 조히 라바데 팀비제 힌두도 강슬라고 로 변은 힌두드는 다 간지 될라다 알려도 뭐로 조히 라바 팀비제 힌두도 강도고 로.
So if you look at the external phenomena such as tree, whether the tree is alive or not, it depends on how the four elements of the trees functions. When the four elements of the trees are no longer, functioning, then the tree will not be no longer alive.
나촌라 대다 만다와 가르쳐드려서서나 아니 뒤년도 롱기년도 시바쳐드려데 소대나만 도여마로.
So then for ascension beings or the human and human beings particularly, we have not only that our functioning of our body are not only because of those four elements, but in addition to that, we also have what is known as lung, or the wind, or the energy, along with the consciousness. Unlike the other, living things such as trees and so forth.
근데 신도 강된 주식 강반나 얘기가 속에서 본데 강윤이 가르 강고르서서나 자이 농당 희반이데 강고 가서 지고.
So what happened with the sentient beings when the sentient beings go through the process of dying, is not only the cessation of the functioning of those four elements, but also the dissolution of the wind and the gross level of consciousness.
장장가 주신게 그러러. 근데 인샤샤르지로. 시세디 인샤샤르지. 힌두리에서는 나는 나한테 컨도에 있는 소화기 레그 말이.
So if we have an idea of dying a person similar to the dying a tree, then we'll have not much feeling.
아니 시바데 자동다 된지 짜니게 놓는데 자동다 된지 짜니게 놓게 짜데 로종 오마소는 되고도 타만.
So as we mentioned during last week's teachings, the process of dying of the individual as a sentient beings there's a process of dissolution of the consciousness. Consciousness that actually pervades the entire channels, the 72,000 channels are, there's this proper sequence of going through the dissolution, the stages of the dissolutions, and at the end of the dissolutions, then how the consciousness actually leave this present body and enter into the intermediate state.
그래서 팀이 따데 간사라니래 차트고 그러더라. 그 시바지에 노유비 간사들 로이차 히반데지 칸 계차 마시와이나 시바지엔다 매보 차유디 간사 커니라 노하면다 용시에야 말이. 시바생이 개말래나. 그러와 롱젠다 뉴유디 간사라니라 초하면다 레데 가르세소나. 그러와 히바지비다.
So when the individual goes through the dissolution, the process of the dissolution of those winds and consciousness, then the individual actually experiences the different kinds of signs as a result of the dissolution of one's consciousness. So that actually proves the sign that is experienced by the individual is a proof positive of possessing a consciousness within us. it is because of the dissolution of the consciousness we are having this kind of experiences of the different kinds of signs, the appearance of the signs.
간제 된주기 신데 된주기 시바데 참모는 또 참모는 치생 되니 깨지 심할래 절로 로아되다 아니 바도 생기게 제와들래.
So as all those gross level of the consciousness dissolve one after another, and it becomes subtler and subtle, and at the end, all those gross level of of consciousness will no longer exist, and only the subtlemost consciousness exists within the center of one's center channel, and that too will leave this the central channel, and then at the moment your consciousness at the central channel leaves, the subtlemost conscious central channel leaves, then person is said to be and no longer alive.
된주기 바도세데 류등아서 미통 라시마에 일류세고라. 일류 인바 간실 공부 괜찮 준주여행에 석강고 모통에 된주기 다 딘타 지지레 쳇등이기 제와지네 될 바도슬라.
So that as soon as the person's the subtlemost consciousness leaves the body, the present body, then the consciousness will enter into the intermediate state. Intermediate state. So once the individual has taken rebirth or the enter into the intermediate state, there is no gross form or the physical form that can be seen by our, eye consciousness, but rather it is a mental body. They acquired mental body as soon as they take a rebirth within the intermediate state, they acquired mental body, complete faculty, possessing a sudden miracle power as well. So then their lifespan of the Bardo being, or the intermediate states beings, are the 7 days, and then the maximum will be the 49 days. But then also there are some said that there's possibility that intermediate state can stay even more than 49 days.
지름치 가르타지어서는 델레 마와 대의 용코마치 민두스 인터넷에 다그 말에서는 저도 봐도 투르드는 여러색도 대만이 아닌지 말이다.
So Rinpoche said that although that I have not seen myself the text that actually describes, that it actually explains the Bardo beings, can stay more than 49 days. But some says there are certain sources. It actually explains the Bardo beings can stay more than 49 days. However, Lam Rim Chenmo has stated that there is no such authentic text that actually talks about, the Bardo being can stay more than 49 days.
되게 봐도 된다. 당가서 아바 되는 제시된 산자자유 지내서
So now let's go through the text. It is on 311. Right? Yeah. The last paragraph, how you take rebirth.
나초기 가르히고 하고 거서나 긴주 코인 주래로 긴주 거는 코알 간득한데 잖는 로어서 계세시데 시 저완이 되네 저완인데 누수 로어에서네 누구 좀 계세시고 알아. 나초디 내가 된적거들어 긴주 코인 주래 히고 알았어.
So what we are really dealing here during these teachings is we are really dealing with the origin of sufferings. How the origin of sufferings really give rise to taking rebirth within the cyclic existence.
그래서 가도 현재 저와도 인사샷도 가르치는 희고를 상인 지어로. 뭐게 제 레기 두스 코고에 대해서 저거 주디 따다도 긴주 코이 주래.
So here why we are taking rebirth. So our rebirth as ordinary beings are the product of the delusion and karma. And when it asks what is delusion and karma, as the karma and delusions are the origin of suffering.
달로인다. 나바 년상자 유치네사. 니데 제와네 레나네. 바시티에세 제이네스 랑다 리팅비 선제 통네. 대달라 하바 만에 대달라 따와당스 제와소 샤원되네 제이네스 존도 번절라스. 파미 컨트롤 시진로도 통데 디체에서 파마니 네보시바 마인젠도 네보시바 주마진도 통데 델라 차번저로서 디바데지로다.
That's So let's read through the text. It says, if a being of the intermediate states is to be born in a womb, it observes beings of the same type of itself at its future rebirth place. It then wishes to gaze at them and play with them and so forth, and the desire to reach this place. So,
맞아. 제와 렘바스니 잘라데 렘바로. 베나 제와 렘바스디 잘라데 렘바로. 잘라 렘발레 렌데 줄로고로.
so just like we want to take some objects. So if you want to have the certain particular object, that you have to have some kind of motivations. Similarly, if you have a desire to have a rebirth, take a rebirth, and you have to have certain motivations of taking rebirth.
딘드 바도와디 가를 렌데고 레슬로소나 아니 ndobati 제네로. ndobatel 가른 로데고 있는 로데고로. 가르토는 로데고리 로와 있는 딜로와. 그 문도지 제거이나 대단지 몇던저 통하네. 아니 몇데슬라 따되고다 인데슬지 가보젠데고 던도 통고에 다도와.
So this is like, what kind of rebirth that individual may take, whether it's human beings or whatever. There is a certain motivations prior to taking actual rebirth. So it's pretty clear. It says the beings who are intermediate state is to be reborn in a womb. So it observes beings of the same types at itself, its future rebirth place. It then wishes to gaze at them, play with them, and so forth, and desire to reach this place.
맞아. 그때 때 가르 놓고 그러세는 녀단이 로데고 그러세요. 이러. ndobachida lemba yenere kanje seneni gi jenjene joshima ndoege lenji jeje jagoro leyo ba kanshela katujela seba shu chombo thoa shu chombo jinge ba de jagoro karsana kenigi robotene ani rogore
Seba the lemba ni.
맞아. senle seba ni so da 생이 제 해고라 대나기 긴데로 코노 라운드 세면도 kanje ndoba shu chombo jidan kanje dindrigi jenshene 봐도 와디 치고도.
So then also the bardo beings also, when the bardo beings going through the process of his death, and it happens with certain attachment or the desire.
단데 디월도 단데 디월을 뜨는 거 컨트롤이 제비 계산도 될라 차번저로 왔지. 대양사 뭐잖아. 뱀에다 제완되라 네 제발라 차베 네고시반되도 와지 포자나네 니 제바다 제와제 뱀에라 차반되도 대단 년조살에 송베서 보면 네고시는 컨트롤 재생이 진짜 표현달래 맞어. 맞지 로셔다고 대단하게 뭔지 집어는
So it misperceives its father's semen and its mother's blood at its present lying together. Its parents are not actually lying together at this time, but as if in an illusions, it seems them lying together and becomes attached. So if it is to be reborn female, it turns away from the woman and desire the man, wanting to lie with him. If it is to be reborn male, it turns away from male, opts from man, and the desire the woman and wanting to lie with her.
됐다 내주시 비싼 내주시 비싸네 아니 파마 가서 파마고 통화 멤버 아니 알레 컨트롤 트레이닝 녀보 시바 통화 시도스 대답이 되바제네 제다 녀와 쇼바 대다 제바 비메 대이야라 제 강양 면하와 포문이지 세마 장시 통화스 대라 트레이닝 바시데 츠포스 어떻게 시원하 이도
So then it says, in this way, as a level of yogic deeds explains, it does not see its actual parents. It seems them lying together through misperceiving the semen and blood. Having conceived such a desire, the beings of the intermediate states draw closer and closer to the man and woman, eventually arriving at a point where it cannot see any part of their bodies except for their genitals. And angry at this sight, and it dies and reborn.
바도기 우치에도 지로와 변 컨트롤이 지이 전전 우치에 손이지 통도 지단데 대용으로 변나 기지 동보도 지라 파밍에는 사자와 될라 니 사자고요나 단다 코 이제 쟁이데 할로 대마타는 거로 그래서 알려도 되지라 하지다 그래서 데바데도 컨트롤되니 사고로다 실내시바니 세나리오 간제 대마타도 지쟁이데 수제거를 해서나 단다 파문이 예부집이 걸라 추네 아니지 반대로 시우진 폐결의 제용이 돼 매반하고 이제 통용이 컨트롤하고 지제 된적이 제제거든 그 내용이로 하지.
So if you look at this passage, and it really explains there is certain immediate conditions or the cause that individual enables the individual to take a rebirth in then certain form. It is all due to, it's all forced by karma, the very forceful power of karma that individual makes the individual to, generate some kind of anger and so forth.
하나 파만이 이거 뒤서 간절질래 파만이 ingele 슈거에서 나와이나 되면 정도로 대양서 파만이 차바 제대에서 내가 잡고 내가 잡이 거스 법하나 주코나 코아 가와숑라서 디제라 니가 그টা기 티바니 되마자와 제대 숑데에서 대니 마이응에서 제네에서 변화오마 그거는 정비 제마젠도서 차반제가 대단해지도 바시바된가 반절라서도 돼.
So, then here it says, moreover, the mother and the father generate desire, which becomes intense for a period, at the end of which a gelatinous semen is emitted. Then the drop of the semen and the blood invariably issue forth from the two of them, mixing within the mother's reproductive tract, then congealing like the skin on the top of boiled milk that has been allowed to cool.
당가 쪽이 처바지 제거를 변으로 변은 매치 전에 아메리칸에 저원에 의여나 네 가르치는 아메리칸에 용화를 세지로 변 렌데를 개만해 와이나 개만해 서고라 단 렌데 개만해는 아시케네 두고 말을 가보러 다 간지 딘디기 젠제를 렌데세에 여버 간다고 해서 변은 매치 아메리카 파만이 있는 게 찾아봐 열어.
So now here we can say that once the individual has taken a rebirth in the intermediate states, and their lifespan is either 7 days or maximum will be the 49 days. And after 49 days they take a rebirth and have a different form. So then it's due to one's own the force of one's karma and delusions. There is no certain particular place that one can choose to take a rebirth, but our rebirth will be chosen by one's own karma, uncontrollable. We have no control over it. So therefore, if one person who passed away in Tibet, and that very Tibetan guy who take a rebirth in the intermediate states, and after the end of the period of their lifespan of the intermediate states, the being of the Tibetan person will take a rebirth in the United States. So how it happens then?
당가 저기 용투를 가르려서나 아니 바도 이 세대 도미에서 바도 걸어져 왔다. 바도 걸어 런세리 semba 가테 대례려로. 지나는 가서 semba 가테는 단도 조벌 해금은 가서 조벌에 단다 샤지 뒤지 봉버로. 봉버데 유리이나 시바 갈래는 조벌 대례게.
So now here the Bardo beings are unlike the beings who are not in the Bardo or not in the intermediate states, because it is to say that they have it is a mental body, what we call their body is a mental body. At the moment they can think of one place. Not only their mind, they are traveling mentally, but they themselves, the individual, will be there. Wherever they can think of that particular place, the Bardo beings will be there. So therefore it says there are no obstruction to the Bardo beings. It is unobstructed by any object. It can just go through and penetrate through. And at the moment that the Bardo beings can think of the place, it is thousands of miles away from here, the person will be there. At the moment he or she can think about.
또는 랜드치기 제서만도 와이나 딘주기 베비 바다와 되는 저기도 로아 딘주기 아메리카 파마 가요로 와치 녀데 쇼가 가르쳐라로 와. 세토아지 레고로 레기 있으라고 면은 가투도도 저러와. 메바체 아니 딘주 파마니 녀데 쇼가 가르쳐서 라와이나 다 제나레레 뭐 파마티니 레여서 이제 힘아지 이제 기그래.
So then when it comes to the explanation of taking rebirth from one place to another place, then this explanation must be done on the basis of karma. Without having a proper appreciation to the karma and the detailed explanation of taking rebirth from one place to another place will not become much, sense. Will not make much sense. So therefore, at the individual who is taking a rebirth from a different place and enter into the intermediate state and taking a rebirth in their future life in a one individual, in a one particular parents. So why this individual is actually chosen that particular the parents, it is not a random. So therefore, since that is not a random, then we have no other choice but to touch the karma, but to talk about the karma.
되게 깨져 지히로와. 파미 콘트라 년도라 나시 생이지 개만래나 파미 콘트라 차진 제 차나 부금을 차진 색깔을 좋아지고.
So then there's consciousness must be accepted. So if you do not accept consciousness, then here, even though that both father and mother have no faults in their body, the system, where they can, but even then, it is not sudden to have the couple, kids, the baby, right? So that's not just only external conditions of the substances is needed, but also to become, the child. There needs to be a consciousness that enters into the substances.
디고라 세리다 다다니까 개발행이지 정으로 집에 간지시에 카스지라에 있어서 간지시디 아니 텔레미스게 렌스게면도 간데인한다고 지송 러기도사 렌스게 말하다 나시로 오지 개자마시나 나실에 젬비게 차진 창조자는 부금에 잡에 전세 가르세디 디 세리바데기로 미시게 텔레 데레스는 렌치게 저면도 송도사
제 강다 제
세리다 다다니까 개발이다 된지질 정으로 지고 개차트인 송도사
So then His Holiness also asks a very, renowned scientist about why, also a very, he's also a physician. He's a very renowned physician. His Holiness asks the question, why that the parents are not having kids? Why the woman is not having pregnant, even though both of them are not lacking anything, in terms of the external substances. Everything is present. Yet at the same time, they're not having a kid. And His Holiness has asked this question to them, but they have not a specific answer to that.
된주선도 어디 시바 여마르선 타지 못해지로 델레센지 고드세지 로직 네바들레요 거다.
So then the question may arise that the person may have need to think of something else, because becoming a pregnant doesn't necessarily having it is not certain to have an individual to become a pregnant because of the unfaulty substances of both father and mother. But there is something needs to be, there's one requirement is there, and if you think about that requirements, we cannot think other than something that is not an external phenomena. We need to think about something that is abstract, which is lacking. So therefore, we can't really think other than consciousness. Yeah.
단 렌제세의 켈링이 됐다. 잔이야 토마에 차요디. 뒤 힘의 참모의 추뒤 중에 서래세 좋아지래도 렌제긴데 내가 도세지라. 그러와 잠블레데 동상배 차비네 거서 신의 차이 뒤 참모의 수수뒤 주발에세지어라. 대양지래고야도.
So then also there's also another question that we may ask: how the universe, the system of the universe coming into being, because in the beginning it is completely empty space, and within that empty space the different atoms or the molecules, the formed, and and finally it becomes grosser object. Not only that it becomes a gross object, but also it becomes such very big as a universe. So how those are coming into being? So this can be also asked the questions.
시바소르다 레세도서 켈랭거사게 체리바다 냥던 조윤디 강에질 두부가서 니카둘라 아니 텐서사거여지기 견자토여지어로.
So there are a lot of questions need to be asked. Who actually created this? How the gross object, the bigger objects coming into being, and how those the subtle atoms, it is the togetherness of the subtle atoms becomes the bigger objects. It is really become randomly, or is it created by someone? What is the force behind this forming of this particular object?
저 아마 트렌딩이 강가 슈트지는 유튜브를 눌러서 당가서 인지 먹거든 아드 펜토 말이라 비다 슈트는 슈트 제겐 눌러다 뭐 동타몽부터 되게 잼비게 로직 강가 슈트지는 나이들로도 다 뜻을 무슨이 내바로 와다 무슨 내바서로 무슨 예비 주시.
So then there are a lot of which he said that he also heard a lot of the evidence of the individual who can remember their previous life. Not only a few individuals, but thousands of people in this world.
다 던주기 사나치 동어디 가제 가초기 주본디 노로라 단다 메토라지 제데 신이 제 만다와치 자자줘요도다.
So then when we see this kind of when we hear this kind of stories, then there might be something that can transcend from one life to another, something that is very abstract, something that cannot be seen, something that cannot be touched, something that cannot be smelled, and so on. But rather, there is a one abstract, entity that transcends from one life to another, which becomes the, actual source of, transcending from one life to another.
텔레 남바스 지고도 세가요 뭐지 다 텔레 셰바스 다니 제거래 다 친리 켜바 속이 텔레 진주 여 초고도 텔레 셰바 세고요 되면서 이게 산산들이 질려되어 서도.
So now there are many, not only Buddhists, but also the non-Buddhists, especially the ancient Indian, the non-Buddhist believers. They have a belief of consciousness. Consciousness is the one that transcends from one life to another life, and entering into the body and so forth. So, so then when it comes to the modern science, there are many renowned, scientists who are free from the extreme views, are really thinking about there might be something else other than the gross physical form, that there's something, the abstract entity that might be traveling from one life to another life, but they don't know whether it needs to be called as a consciousness or not. So we'll take break here.
단다 아주 지당 아주 봐도 걸리시고로 봐도 거서는 문에 저이나로 수준 양내들이 정해나 다 단다기 봐도 되지 그송라고로 말이 시바도 지 그송라고로 다들 랑주 모원에 제는 그송랑주세요 되게 그런 뼈사게 렌세지 그런 수도 여러 아주.
So we're talking about the bardo at this point, the intermediate state, right? So if one is a practitioner, a good practitioner of taking the three bodies into the path of enlightenment, the path of three kayas, then that is a really good to contemplate and meditate. And we can think about the bardos. So there is a one particular text specifically designed for this practice of taking three kusum lamkir, which means that taking three bodies into the aspect of the path, kusum lamkir, taking the three bodies into the aspect of the path. That is called one particular practice. The books particularly designed for the practice of, how the ordinary death, ordinary intermediate stage, ordinary birth can be transformed into the extraordinary, transformed into, in other words, the spiritual path.
Tendriki chiringi keshe shiyo ko yugubin yeda karta sanghagi chiyo no mocha tanya chegiri mado ngani chena nga tsogi shepagi rotonda zubuki ne tanto se nyanyu to no la yuntu wera.
So this normally have a detailed explanation in the sacred Mantrayana text. But we all go through those experiences, such as experiencing of signs, different signs at the time of one's death. And we all go through the dissolution of the gross level of consciousness and so forth, and gathering those consciousness at the heart of one's central channel and so forth are, common to all of us, whether one is tantric practitioner or not. It's not necessarily the experience might have for who is engaging in the practice of Tantrayana, but also this is a common experience experienced by entire beings. He's not going to leave a specific time for questions and answers time, but if you have questions, you can ask, and you can go ahead and ask the questions.
Okay, so just to give a little context, everyone had asked a few weeks ago if there was a time frame between the gross level of consciousness and the subtle level of consciousness appearing. And so I was just thinking about when His Holiness was giving the teachings recently, he had just mentioned the Heart Sutra and how form is empty, emptiness is form, and talked about that a bit, and then said it suggested that that also means there's no difference between the two truths. And so then it, I don't know, made me wonder if there's really a difference then between the gross level of consciousness and the subtle level of consciousness.
뭐디 인데스셔다 데 컨데스 저차고나 가서 가서 예자 결혼식 송주나 소스 송전날이야 단다 먼저 세르미용 배날이야 더 소동보 동반일의 소스 송도 동반일의 소지만 있을라 줘봐서 대인이 대인이 남자리야 저지 즉 송송스 또 고인규 즉 타데만 임비 최지 임바 지리야 그 대강리야 야 타데기 남자다 도면 남자 샤터야지 근데 시작인 소리 나서스 대제되다 뭐 단도 제면은 건저 다가나 건저 셰벌이야 셰버다 셰버락보다 셰버 타모스야데 갈리 고치 인규 직셰버 직강 샤터야도 지 dinita tawara kande chawa nge shiu kozeng mo de twa de kande rachina
desga nero penaro deni sete ngochile dobata dero
so
deni sete zu tombani bote ngochile dobata dero
so first let's talk about the two truths. So two truths according to the Madhyamaka Prasangika. It is identical in its nature, but it distinct and conceptually distinct, and identically in one nature but conceptually distinct. So in other words, two truths are not completely how do you call, separate from each other. Two truth can exist within one locus.
근데 고대어 시절로 이게 메토데 때네 요와라 때네 요바 상지 크게 메토기 내가 제거를 다녀도 요지대로 디젠 때네 요비 메토기 코로 메토랑 내가 제거를 때네 요발에 때네.
So let's take a flower in front of myself. The flower exists depending on other factors, right? Flower exists depending on other factors. it is because of its existence, which is dependent on other factors. The flower has its own particular functions.
된주기 때문에 여봐도 매도 가는 세스나 되나니에요 말.
And then this particular flower that exists depending on other factors. If we were to prove further analysis how that exists, where that exists, then it cannot be found.
도대고 쇼저래 때는 여봐상지 내가 젠데 때는 여봐상지 쟤는 예명에 인가 된데 두더라.
So then here you know it's very interesting to see that it's because of depending on other factors it exists and it has its functions. Each and every phenomenon has its own particular functions because of their existence, because of their existence that is dependent upon other factors. But then the very existence of that particular phenomena, if you go through a further analysis of that particular phenomena, how that exists, where that exists, we cannot be pinpointed. So then when it comes to the gross level of consciousness and subtle level of consciousness, it's not similar to that.
단당 예데만 천원손 내가 제바 강의에 니 시바라바 일레가 전에 시고로 공인 안기 배쳐도네. 그래더니 차이 롱선이데 내가 지에고 말이.
So at this point, when I'm giving you your teaching here, I'm using only my gross level of consciousness. In fact, my subtle level of consciousness is not functioning at all. It just exists, but it's not functioning. It's not actually working right now. So when my subtle-most level of consciousness actually functioned, then it's only at one time, at the time of one's death, at the time of my death, and there is a very brief time the subtle-most consciousness can activate and it begin to function.
장롱량의 영역도 이게 실로기 단진나나게 로 롱이 잡아 연수 줘봤대 되네. 아니 신도 차이 싸움만은 신도 거우 카자기 받은 로네 신도 차이 롱상이 내가 제외돼. 아니 유동반이라 또해 가서 탐 받은다고 말해.
So then other great practitioners who are practicing on prana, right, focusing on channels and dots, then for them it's a different case. Because during their practice, it's not necessarily they will have this experience at the time of their death, but also during their practice, they can have this experience and activate their subtle-most consciousness through the practice of dissolution of the gross level of consciousness. So then, when all those dissolutions, when all this gross level of consciousness are dissolved, and then only when the subtle-most consciousness begin to function, then where all those gross level of consciousness are gone. So then, to answer to this question is the gross level of consciousness are not manifested, activating at that moment, but they still exist in the manner of imprint or latency. So then let's take one example here. When we are in a deep sleep, not just sleeping, you're just taking nap or so, but rather you're just in a very deep sleep. So at that time, your 5 senses are exists in the dormant manner.
Pena loba papa nyanja yi segoro loba papa dongni ngosun to bi nyanja yi shi ngosun ne ge chewe di ani shangchu sendo se ya ba cha ngong ro sa la ge.
So then similarly we'll also find in the text there are Arya beings who are in the meditative equipoise, especially on the ultimate nature of reality or emptiness. So when they're in that meditative state, not only their gross level of consciousness are, functioning, but also even the bodhicitta will become a latency because it's not actually actively functioning at the moment because his or her mind is completely infused with emptiness, non-dual emptiness, meditating on non-duality. So therefore, there's no other appearances at all, even though he or she has generated bodhicitta, but the bodhicitta will live, exist in the manner of latency, or just in the manner of latency.
Tanga so tandro ma pangji de danji shin de chai long chisen shin de chai long se de ni ba do gi lu bo ngo de chwa de da yonju ni to na na pa se de lo do gi ni to le de yang shi ba chong mo de la sa ba cha yong lo ni shi to ra pa de ngo de che yo ba di che wa le ba ta ra.
So then when all the gross level of consciousness are existed, gone through a complete dissolutions, then your subtlemost consciousness will be activated and it begin to function. And then at the very moment of entering that, getting into the process of entering this consciousness into the bardo, the intermediate state, then the dissolutions that we talked about earlier, the reversed order of dissolution will begin. And then again it forms a gross level of consciousness, and then the subtlemost level of consciousness will no longer functioning.
So nieto na na ba se tanye che gre ta se di shipa chamo da ra ba ni gi tun chang ro ji la lo se ba na gi cha ro yang se cha de le di che wa ye se le so da.
So that is the last moment of the dissolutions. When that happens, there's a moment what we call as the black nair attainment. That is a black nair attainment, and after the black nair attainment, then your subtlemost, at the moment that you're actually out of the black nair attainment, then subtlemost consciousness will begin to function. And then after the subtlemost consciousness begin to function, then again it will go through the reverse order of the dissolutions, and then subtlemost consciousness will be again the functioning of subtlemost consciousness will be seized again.
Tin de ji ba re yang ba do wa de cho wa de ti chi sen de le chi yu se ba do de pen jo ba re do pen chi sen le de ma ta da a ming ye de shu wa de ha rang yang nie to na la pa de ma ta de ni she ba de a ming ye ne shin de chei she ba de a ming ye ne le ba da nie to na la pa de ba ti nya.
So then it's this kind of the dissolutions will continue to happen whenever you take a rebirth in a different stage. Once the bardo being is entered into the mother's home, in other words, taking a rebirth in a different form. So then again, the reverse order of dissolution will happen again to the person, beginning from the subtlemost consciousness, then into the black nair attainment, and so forth. It goes a reverse, dissolution. This will happen in reverse order.
Dendri ge chi sen chamo de nyang du le se go ro ta kan ji she ba ra pa de we di a mi ko no ne nyin kha thoma shu sa de nyin kha cha go lo so ka se ro a dendri a mi ko ran nyen de shu di kyu nyang do la ong bo jen da de she ba jen da yin le de ko de de ani ka le se me do ro se ha ne yang la de da yu do a mi nyen chong chi we di.
So then, because of this subtlemost consciousness, become an actual basis or the seat for the rebirth of the individual. And then from that subtlemost consciousness, then since that subtlemost consciousness actually carries the latency of the individual's past deeds, and as well as the gross generation of the gross level of consciousness and so forth, and eventually it give rise to the gross level of consciousness. When the gross level of consciousness will come into being, then the subtle level of consciousness will no longer functioning, will no longer function.
단지天上도와 된만저 힘용도 도와 이제라 하지 도와 단지만이 도무 도와 제 단지 다 지었어
다 켜여를 뭐지 되는 거 봐.
거사
디니 많이 내서 깨내서 되나?
바시 된가 반절라 하세데 남초서 렌치드 바시 된가 반절라 하세 된가 반데 디치도 기진나시세
나오르시.
다dim로이다 된가 반데 디치도 기진나 바시비 투 델레진비에서 엄빈 중앙지 첨보 차 차와던 제바 대단 팀비 컨트라든 뒤바라스 엄보단 제바 연종데스 디디스 나시슈비닌参加와 제샤오스 긴지 캐멜레만은 지 이제는 바시비닌参加와 르도스 이거 질러서다
So let's read through the text here again. At this point, the intermediate stage of the beings who is to be reborn ends, and this being's fundamental consciousness enters the congealed mass. The force of this consciousness brings together and developed a combination of blood and semen that is conducive to producing the sensory faculties, as well as the mixture of the former congealed blood and semen and the subtle trace of the four great elements that are the cause of the five sensory faculties. So these traces are something that is other than the congealed blood and semen, something that has sensory faculties and that is other than what was formerly there arise. After the consciousness has entered, at this point, it is called the rebirth. Those who do not accept the fundamental consciousness exist, as such, the mental consciousness take rebirth.
또 제가 되는 소리나 변는 넘버 변는 longi 제는 센터 말에 기기나 켈링 기기나시 가서 남비기 주타노로 나시 초지 켈링이다 나시 초주 켈링이다 류에라다.
So now here, when it comes to this explanation, then we need to touch a little bit to the four different philosophical tenets here. Within the four different the Buddhist philosophical tenets, there are an individual who accepts the sixth consciousness, and then that's eight consciousness, eight different kinds of consciousness, six different kinds of consciousness.
경균등에 나지 렌제기 때도 집이 다 생기대 경균나시래서라 그러더라. 당한 속에 저 렌제기 나 때도 집이 다 생기대 렌제기 거는 롱에기 준도가 될 이진나시서는 다니지고로.
So those who accepts the fundamental consciousness, which belongs to the Chittamatra school, the mind-only school. It's also known as the mind basis of all. Sometimes the translator would translate in Tibetan. It is called Kunji, which is mind basis of all. It's a literal translation of literal translation. The fundamental consciousness it gives you the more meaning to it, but the literal translation is the mind basis of all. And those who accept the mind basis of all would be say that mind basis of all is the one that actually connects from one life to another life. Those who do not accept, then the consciousness, only the consciousness, instead of saying mind basis of all, but the consciousness is the one that connects from one life to another life.
맞죠? 나시 용자들에 나시 주주대로와. 나시 주주는 미기 넘버 10번에 이지 넘버 10이 가다. 미기 넘버 10 나이 넘버 10번에 이지 넘버 10이 가다. 나시 주주라 그래. 용자전에 되리.
So then normally we accept six types of consciousness, the five sense consciousness and one mental consciousness. So altogether is six consciousness. So then, if you add two more consciousness on top of that, the mind basis of all, or the fundamental consciousness, and then yuni, which is the diluted consciousness, diluted mental consciousness, will be added until this belongs to this is only the philosophical tenets of Siddhamatrans, the acceptance. It is the proponent of Siddhamatran school.
되지. 다들 이게 바시기 단지로서 이게 근데 바시기 근데 바시베 된가 봐도 네 제시세로 아밍에 등에 사자바디 제시도바 되냐로 아주 시바지 이게 바시 가바다 제시도바 되냐.
So at the moment, at the moment, the intermediate state exists to cease. In other words, then taking rebirth in the next life, the future life, will become simultaneous. It is a simultaneous.
중앙체 차 창문도 수준 제요인데 아니 튀고 차요인데 아니 라바 차요도 와. 도망가서 단지 신대 차이 생대이 강나 중앙이 제약한 거 열었다. 중앙이 제세고로 딱 건지 나시 라바기 바차세나 제세네요. 제때 창문에 걸리지로. 코츠 라라라 제요인데 아니 고 렌지 지진을 시에디 아니 온보트스 되네 라바 차요도.
So just like the external objects, object becomes a form, and that is visible to our consciousness by, beginning from its atoms, the gatherings of the very subtle, level of objects, and that becomes grosser and grosser, and finally it is visible to our consciousness. Similarly, when it comes to the consciousness, the very subtlemost consciousness, which carries actual latency of all this, the gross level of consciousness, then since this had a latencies or the potencies of the gross level of consciousness, and for eventually this subtlemost consciousness actually produces all this gross level of consciousness, and when the gross level of consciousness are completely formed, then the subtlemost consciousness will no longer function.
Rinpoche, I can understand how that would happen in birth, but Western science shows us that our sense organs are very, very complex, huge networks of neurons and a huge nervous system which takes time to develop, and I can understand how it would take time for the latencies of our consciousness to come forth as we develop in the womb. But what about in the bardo? How does it work in the bardo? We don't have those sense organs. Yeah. So how do those sense faculties manifest themselves?
So 반대 당한저 즉 지난 겨울에는 간리하다 즉 가서래 그 남지라고 해리데 간다 지게고 양야 써야리야 야고 비지 남지라고 해리데 써야리야 다시 고려야 시비 고르고레스 바지 딱고 그 타모니아라고 리야 깨고로 생겨야 타모니아라고 리야 레알리아 고르고 버티페나 군수 남지란데 세고 말데 군수단다 생리 대상 생리베 아니 거지 레잘리아 때제 아니 지금서 온보익 딱한다 시아바되게 야 쳔모차리아 고야 라르토야리아 뜻을 마음 고르고 버지 다 군수 디나로리아 다 레자요로바 레자릭디야고 컴페토야리아 시부 고르고 버지 뜻세고 레스타디 기부지고 인사레스 나나죠 시게되고 로 미게 타모디야 라르토고요 버지 타모디 칼레티야 라르토고요 버지 다 디체리야 바르돌 마자르온데 다 바도 디 콜 시바라고 데 컨데스 차고는 콜 원식 다 원식이요 말에 고 일루이 세고래 다 딜이야 컨데나스 고 바도
대니 짓는다고 말다 단다데 변으로 주제 참모야 산을 아반지세에 되 시바 참모 산을 아반지세에 진 집어 말이다 그 아저기 변은 시바데 발라니로 제디 시바데 배트 참모 찬의 인주부터 깨쳐 말해 시바 현다지 이 참모나 수유디 코 파베자제네 자샤 소리 지르마도 코피 참 라바 데메비 소리지 말해 로 시바 가스 차네 이찬도디 시바 차도 그리마도 부춘주 도서 시바 참모야 시바 침부 차서 던지 시바 제수세 개체요 말해 시바 가디네 라바데 가디네 라바데 그래 존재미시데 가디네 라바데 그래라 알레도 뭐.
So when it comes to the development of the gross level of consciousness is probably different from the development of neurons. So because the subtle level of consciousness cannot become a gross level of consciousness, not at all. The gross level of consciousness will always remain as a gross level of consciousness. For instance, my eye consciousness that which sees the form will never become a subtle level of consciousness. It will always remain as a gross level of consciousness. It will not, become subtle or not become grosser, but it will always remain as a eye consciousness that perceives the form and remain as a gross level of consciousness.
해바이 변로 해바이 지당 계시는 zu기 차트에 가서 참여해서 로에지도 참 해바 참문데 뒤지게지 타투버 계시셔도 유튜브 있잖아 해바 계지 해가 말이 지당이나 로 단다 봐도 얘네 것은 해바 코너 라방 것도 제거래 가서 이 치생 깨져 말해 로 변에 바디 일이 코너 바디 지지 이지 나바 해바데 가서 나기 거 다른 것도 줘요래 그 일이 코너라이디 이지 해바 코너라는 것도 줘요래 변에 된적이 사는 동안만 줌에로 코너 해바 담아져 열어 맞춰나기 풍부질라 사는 마도 하진 해바 라바 코너 치시 가바데 뒤냐도 해바 라바 것도 제사래 이제나 이제
어디 영어로스
어시요 엄보 괜찮아 엄보이 미게 통고래 안쪽이 고거래 그래서 그 가서 미시 줌에로 엄보 말어 맞춰기 해바나 산도je 말라다.
So now here, when it comes to the bardo beings, they are, at the moment they have entered into the bardo state, the state of bardo state, they will have complete faculties. It doesn't require sudden, time for them to develop their, eye consciousness and ear consciousness and so forth. But at the moment they have taken rebirth within the bardo state, their faculties and everything will be completed. But then again here, when you think about their faculties, consciousness and so forth, we should not think about the faculty of the being who are in the form realms. That is a formless. But they do have all kind of consciousness that can see, they can hear, feel, and so forth. It is also called the mental body.
Bena ngazo bena jupa sengde yilu da bujiro bena roa bena toba chepa chenta da ye ni piye de chi method share sedi method yili roa bena kansa khron be de jupa la ron to nge chi na bena ngando buji ki piye de method shedan de chigu yo na method shedan de ngi shipi ki ngol yili chi share ro ye.
So here the mental body, here again now, let's take another example of mental body, which is setting a metaphor, is that when someone who has gained high levels of realizations can, engage their activities, what we call the miracle activities, which is emanating from themselves, and we can make emanation of a flower. If it's an emanated flower, it's through the miracle power of the person. And then you see a flower on the table, but that particular flower is illusory.
메도데 가지 시비기 비게 수치 소샤라. 시비 수치 소샤리마도 그 비게 의비네시 수치 마라.
So this is also similar to a mental body. The very flower that you see is a mental body because it's an emanation from the mental consciousness of the individual.
바도스 거 레정하게 유류 주세디 나속이 나기게 라파치 매와이나야 그렇지 롱소리지 던리기지 유여사라.
So in the Bardo beings, it's a very complex, of course, but they have complete faculties, as if that they have body and so forth. They can see, hear, feel everything. At the moment they have entered into it, they will have all these faculties complete.
던리지 또 그거 단지 걸 질러서 그 좋아도 맞아 있어. 단지 포산도 되게 그 저글러서 기대 단지가 집어 가야 돼.
Any? Did you ask some questions? Good.
And this is really trivial, but so with somebody dies and then there's that 49-day window, can you tell in like reincarnation that within that 49-day window, the new reincarnate was conceived?
Within the 49.
Oh,
It's someone external.
Yeah, can you tell when it's happened?
Right.
Is that what you're
Or
asking?
just if it's
No,
if
no,
it,
I get
if,
it.
if
I
it
have
works
a
with that kind of certainty.
Can you clarify that? I didn't get it yet.
Can you tell in the from the point of death to the 49 days, can you predict when the rebirth will occur from other things?
Predict means who can predict, like the individual who's dying.
Can anybody
Okay.
Is this a possibility to predict? Is it
Yeah.
based on, for instance,
What
their
kind of
past
rebirth?
things in their past life, dreams
Okay.
in their past life? Can we tell when this is going to occur?
The Bardo ni ani kya wa shambal kan de lengua me so so ni chi. The prediction lungden da so so kep thog ro is Bardo ni ke thog.
나도 간다고도 가보라. 다지 랑어 영에 되고라.
So
가보라.
we can't predict.
얘는 바도 코로나 린틴지 노아. 린틴들 통도.
Bardo being him or herself, that self can see sudden similarity of his or her rebirth. Have sudden intuition of having
다
experience
강사라니
of
대지 연유에는 가슴 아저씨 바로 변학시 또는 뭐 줘도고여서나 지 녀선의 제야당 말이 로 녀선 제야당 맨이야 줘도는 니 제야당 치칼라양 개생기 제바정이게 마치고는 강사 코로나 따때는 도와.
But now, one thing that what we can say is whether the individual will take a rebirth in a higher rebirth or the lower rebirth can be examined by the gathering of their heats. If they had heats gathered, beginning from tip to toe, then individual is actually said to be taking a rebirth in lower realms. But the heat of the body is gathering, beginning from tip to upward, in ascending, and then it's said to be taking rebirth in high realms.
당연서 지제대도 바도다 저와시모세도 타니는 거부시 위지 나코브라 타 녀숑저지로 우 바도스 판도스마유나 다래 바도 조사로 근데 인자는 저 감각이 처음에 따봐 생각하고 걸 리셰킨전에 처음에 따봐시 초도 저 인세데
So if we think when we think about this life, Bardo, and the future life, it seems there's a big gap between those, states of the life state, Bardo state, and then birth state. It seems that there's a big gap between those, among those states. But if you really think very carefully, it's just attached to each other. There's no gap at all. It is a matter of breathing in and out. If you breathe in and then breathe out, if you breathe in and out, once you breathe in, and if you're unable to breathe out, you're actually knocking at the door of the Bardo. So you don't have to travel anywhere. So there's no distance at all.
현재는 텐디징은 마템바치레사 아니 텐디지 마템바 텔라나서 로그바 땡큐와 현재는 디 타트 메드쇼 아니 담비추도에서 들어 담비추에서는 타니 마제네 주야보사에 들어 니 땡 아랑기 주야보사 아니 젠라 야보사 비만체 네 장신 강가예네 Then to the young teacher and bit to a jigging, jet or single so sending watch.
Since there is no distance between the life, birth, and life, death, and birth, since we all go through this process of dying and taking rebirth and birth states and so forth, so may I make all my dying, the state of birth and taking rebirth be meaningful and purposeful by engaging in the practice of Dharma. So may all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas bless me to be able to transform all those the ordinary death, rebirth, intermediate state, and rebirth into the extraordinary that can become a spiritual path for all of us.
Xin Re Se Wan De Zi Jiang Zo Yi Sha Bi Sin Ting Ba Du Din Ju Ji Ba Yuen Chi Da Qin Ba Dong Gyun Du Zang Bo De Yang De Jin De De Da Gyun Ju Ji Su Da Lo Shi Ge Wa De Da Dang Shi Ra Du Ngo Du Zong Shi Bi Dang Ji Ji Ma Wa Ga La Chu Du Nga Ba De Da Jin Ge Yue Za Wa Du Ge Jiang Zong Bo Shi Ji Ra Du